plan on speaking for a long time, to be honest, because I don't like rambling on, and I know you guys probably don't like me talk. I mean, don't like people talking for long. I plan on talking about the tongue, your mouth, and how important it is to speak carefully, and what you say with your mouth can do a lot of things. So we're going to start in James 3 from the beginning. So if everybody wants to get there, and then when you're ready, please let me know. So is everyone there? Okay, so from the beginning, I'm reading in NLT. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach should be judged more strictly." To be honest, most of these verses aren't important, but because I just want everybody to understand, I'm going to start from the beginning. Verse 2, "Indeed, we all make many mistakes, for if we could control our tongue, we would be perfect, and if we could also control ourselves in every other way." So you can see that James has already started to talk about the tongue. And you can see it says that if we could control the tongue, we would be perfect. And everybody usually underestimates the tongue or overrates it, kind of thing, that you wouldn't expect that what you say matters. But if you think about it, if God didn't speak, none of us would be here right now. And that's why um, God spoke and the world was created, and that's why I'm saying that everything you say matters. And we're gonna continue in James. So verse 3, "We can make large horses go wherever we want by the means of small bits in our mouth." Verse 4, "And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong." So you can see here that just you talking, you can command many things. Now, obviously, not all the time you'll just speak and something will happen, but think of it this way. When you ask someone to come, do they not come? It may seem very simple, it may sound very stupid, but at the end of the day, it is true. Whatever you say is very crucial. Verse 5, "In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire." So here, James starts to talk about how the mouth can now be very powerful, even though it seems so small. Verse 6, "And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself." Now, later on you will see that it says, "How can the same mouth that praises the Lord curse one another?" It may sound like very simple, but if you think about it deeply, how can I be saying hi to you, but yet I'm insulting somebody else? The same mouth that we use to pray for everybody will be the same mouth that we'll use to curse everybody. Is that right? Does that make any sense? At the end of the day, the Lord created us to praise him, to do all the things that he wants us to do, not for us to insult one another, not for us to belittle one another. Even though I'm only talking about the negative things right now, which is mainly what I wanted to talk about, I still will be talking about the positive things. So I'm going to skip to verse 10. So, "And so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right." So that's what I'm talking about. The same mouth that you use to talk is the same mouth that you use to curse. If you also think about it, when Jesus healed, when the disciples healed, he used his mouth, apart from the one time when the woman touched his cloak and she was healed. But even so, it was still by faith. And by faith, technically, you need to speak, you need to understand, you need to be able to read. All of those things come from your mouth at the end of the day. That's why at the end of the day, when you can't speak, you can't communicate. Without communication, what can you really achieve? That's why there is languages. Remember when Babylon was being built and they were all communicating, they could all speak, until God created confusion and none of them could understand each other. What was accomplished at the end of the day? If you don't speak, or if you do speak and you're not saying the right thing, at the end of the day, what is the purpose of your mouth? And I know that it just sounds really, I don't know what the word is, but at the end of the day, your mouth is very, very powerful. So I'm going to continue. I think this is verse 11, yeah. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives, or a grapevine produce figs? No, you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. So here it's saying that at the end of the day, a plant is made to do one job. It is made to grow fruit. If it grows bad fruit, it grows bad fruit. If it grows good fruit, it grows good fruit. Does it do both? Very rarely. And our mouth should not do both. It should not be speaking evil, and it should not be speaking good. So now I'm going to go to we're going to go to Matthew 8, where Jesus heals a man with leprosy. This is from verse 1. A loud crowd followed Jesus as he came down the mountainside. Suddenly, a man with leprosy approached him and knelt before him. Lord, the man said, if you're willing, you can heal me and make me clean. Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing. He said, be healed, and instantly the leprosy disappeared. Now, I don't know if you guys are all reading this in your translation, but you'll see be healed has an exclamation mark. Now, I know there's one thing that me and my family have talked about a lot, that when you do deliverance, or when you're healing somebody, or when you're commanding someone to do something, you must have a tone. You must have something. Like when your parents shout at you, there is a different tone to when they normally just talk to you. At the end of the day, the way you say things, it really matters. When you learn about persuasive writing, you're taught how to persuade somebody, and that's usually through your writing or through your mouth. If you just spoke normally, would you be able to persuade anybody? That is also another thing with your mouth as well. And I think because usually you don't actually hear a lot about what your mouth can do in the Bible. And I was telling Faithful that there isn't actually that many examples of what your mouth can do in the Bible if you remove Jesus and if you remove God. But most of the examples I'm going to be using is from God and Jesus anyways, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that when they spoke, you saw instant things. With the disciples as well, when he gave everybody the ability to cast out demons, you could see that they were happy because they had the ability to use their mouth to do good. All the demons that possess people, do they not speak through the person? If they know that your mouth was not important, they wouldn't be there. At the end of the day, when the Bible says that the devil came to kill, steal, and destroy, most of those things you must be able to speak. To be able to steal something, you must have planned it, it must have been premeditated. At the end of the day, you must have communicated with somebody else that, yes, this is what I'm going to do. Without that communication, none of that would have happened. And the devil knows that you need to use your mouth as well. Was it not God that he now used his own mouth to create Adam and Eve? All of those little things that everybody was just like, oh yes, God spoke and everything was created. Just think about it. Without that mouth, what could you possibly do? And if you think about it as well, God created all of us to have mouth. People that don't have mouth, it's not a coincidence that they can't speak. People that are deaf and dumb, it's not a coincidence that they can't hear one another. It's because without that, there's no unity, there's no communication, you can't understand each other, and at the end of that, there is a division. Most churches, pastors preach. Imagine if they didn't talk, how would you be able to learn? There is so many things that you can do with just that one mouth of yours, and that's why even in James, it talks about how that little thing can cause a great fire. So now I'm going to go to Matthew 8 when Jesus calms the storm. This is from verse 23. Then Jesus got into the boat and started across the lake with his disciples. Suddenly a fierce storm struck the lake, with the waves breaking into the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." Jesus responded, "Why are you afraid? You have so little faith." Then he got up and rebuked the wind and the waves, and suddenly there was a great calm. The disciples were amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked. "Even the winds and the waves obey him." I really like this place because the way that Jesus calmed the storm, it said that he rebuked the storm, which means that it wasn't something that was planned, or maybe it was planned so that Jesus could show how little faith they had, but that would be insulting. At the end of the day, Jesus had the ability to rebuke the storm. And at the end of the day, that is just something that is very, I don't want to say powerful, but at the end of the day it is. Because in order for you to just say something and it happens, that is a gift. And that is why as well, when you go to Corinthians 12, I'm not going to go into there, one of the gifts is to be able to speak in tongues. Everybody as a Christian should be able to do that. And when you speak in tongues, the devil can't understand what you're saying, because at the end of the day, it's a language that he doesn't know. Your mouth is like taking control over you, and you're just talking to the Lord. You're worshiping the Lord. When we have praise and worship, at the end of the day, it's like their mouth takes over the singing, and they end up praising the Lord. They end up worshiping the Lord without realizing what they're actually doing. When you watch Nollywood movies, when you see the witches and they start chanting, at the end of the day, their mouth is what is able to do those type of things. Even though you may think, oh, it's not real, it is at the end of the day. Without them speaking, they wouldn't be able to accomplish what they're doing. The same way with presidents, prime ministers, democracy, what is it all in common that they have? They all talk, they all communicate. Without any of that, we wouldn't be here right now. And that's why the same thing with royalty at the end of the day. If the queen couldn't speak, she wouldn't have that position. Or she probably would because of her bloodline, but at the end of the day, without her speaking, there wouldn't be that much. Now we're going to go to Numbers 22, and we're going to start from verse 26. This is when the Lord gave the donkey the ability to speak. Then the Lord gave the donkey the ability to speak. What have I done to you to deserve this, you beating me 3 times? It asked Balaam. You have made me look like a fool, Balaam shouted. If I had a sword with me, I would kill you. But I am the same donkey you have ridden all your life, the donkey answered. Have I ever done anything like this before? No, Balaam admitted. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the roadway with a drawn sword in his hand. Balaam bowed his head and fell face down on the ground before him. Now I'm not going to continue, but you see, notice how Balaam wasn't shocked that the donkey spoke. At the end of the day, none of us have heard an animal speak, and if we have, it's probably fluke. I know there was one time I was reading with my mom, and we discovered that at one point in the Bible, animals were able to speak. And if you think about it, animals all do have their own language. They do communicate. Lions, when they go to their prey, do they not go more than once? Do they not have different people in different places just to target that one thing? At the end of the day, they're all speaking. Here, a donkey was able to speak because the Lord gave them the ability, which means at the end of the day, if the Lord knows that our mouth is being useless, he can take that ability away from us. The tongue is such an underrated thing, and that's why I really wanted to talk about it, because at the end of the day, like I said, a donkey was able to speak. Someone that is not a Christian would think this is so stupid, that how is a donkey even able to speak? But yet he was. Balaam didn't question it, yet he still talked to the donkey. He still had that thing. And it's another thing as well, because if Balaam really thought about it, he was speaking to a donkey. Anybody that would have been there was like, this is a madman. This is a strange man. And that's the other thing as well. When you see madman walking about on the road, are they all not talking? Are they all not doing something? If it wasn't for the fact that they had no control over their mouth, they wouldn't always be talking. Your mouth is such a useful thing, and that is why that you need to use it wisely. The same mouth that you use to praise and worship shouldn't be the same mouth that you use to curse one another. The same mouth that you use to move mountains shouldn't be the same mouth that you used to kill someone. Some people pray that, oh, let all of my enemies fall. Was that not your mouth that you used to pray? Was that not you that wanted your enemies to fall? Just because you were able to think and say it, does that mean it should happen at the end of the day? I've explained all of the stuff I've wanted to talk about. I am going to go and talk about when Lazarus was raised from the dead. At the end of the day, I don't have the scripture right now, but I do know about it. When Mary and Jesus had no faith in him, and they're like, oh, you came too late, that Lazarus has died. And Jesus was like, wake up. and he woke up. At the end of the day, he didn't just go, wake up, and he woke up. He exclaimed it, he shouted it, which means there must have been a force from his mouth that must have awakened him. He died at the end of the day. Most people that raise people from the dead, even juju or not juju, at the end of the day, they must have spoke. They must have communicated. There must have been something at the end of the day. When you make a covenant with the Lord, do you not speak? Do you not think it? Even when you think, you're still speaking, even though you're not saying it out of your mouth. When the Lord made a promise to Noah that when you see a rainbow, every time that means that, you know, that is a promise that I've made with you. At the end of the day, he spoke it and everybody saw it. At the end of the day, your mouth is such a thing that you need to use wisely. People that can speak in tongues, that can do deliverance and all of that, they are using their mouths. At the end of the day, all I just want to say is use your mouth for the right thing. Don't use it for evil. If you say good, you don't say evil. You think foul language is just foul language. At the end of the day, it must have provoked something for it to become foul language at the end of the day. Thank you very much.